This team is in a great spot heading into Texas Tech Week.
You are Locked On Kansas State, your daily podcast on the Kansas State Wildcats, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, welcome on into Locked On Kansas State, your daily Kansas State Wildcats podcast. I'm your host, Christian Rao, and thank you so much for making Locked On Kansas State your first listen every single day. Welcome back to my everydayers. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. I want to get to my thoughts of the men's basketball game from Friday night against Mizzou, the exhibition game. I want to get to those. We're going to talk about that later on in the show. But first, we have to dive into some advanced data on the game against KU, the Sunflower Showdown, where Kansas State extends the streak to 17 in a row. And what K-State has done over those last couple weeks has been really exciting. And I think they're in their best moment of football for the season, heading into arguably their toughest task of the year against Texas Tech this week. We'll dive into Texas Tech week fully on Tuesday's episode after we hear from Chris Kleiman on Monday afternoon. But until then, I want to dive into one more time the Sunflower Showdown. Bask into it. Victory Monday, if you will. And let's start with that offense, because the offense was absolutely amazing. Avery Johnson led the charge if you're looking at advanced data with a 91.9 offensive grade, but of course it was a lot better than that. And the advanced numbers tell you that it doesn't matter what the box score says in the eyes of players' stats. It doesn't matter that he didn't have a career passing yard day. It didn't matter that he had less than 300 yards passing, something that he's done so far this season. It didn't matter that he had less than 10 carries, something that puts Kansas State 8-3 on the career of Avery Johnson as a starting quarterback, or 3-0 if he's 13 or more carries on the season. He had way less than that. He didn't have to do that. But when he did have to make any type of play, he did it successfully. His completion percentage wasn't the greatest, and you can hear that narrative, and it can continue to be the narrative all season long. But if they continue to win games the way they've won against TCU and now against Kansas, I don't care. I don't care. Make that your narrative about his completion percentage all you want. But if he continues to do what he has done over the last couple games, including in the Sunflower Showdown on Saturday, when he was on, he was absolutely on point. The passes to Jared Tibbs for a touchdown, the amazing passes to Jayce Brown for touchdowns, and some of those other really good passing plays were on point. And that's the type of Avery Johnson you need to make sure you win football games. Do I think he needs to be a little bit more on point for Texas Tech? Yes, I do. And I think that, obviously Texas Tech is a better team than Kansas. There's no doubt about that. Texas Tech beat Kansas by the same exact score that K-State did this past Saturday. And that just shows you that this game coming up on Saturday is wide open. And it should be, because if you remember watching this game this past Saturday, there were multiple times that Kansas State could have broke this game open, could have made this one a lot higher of a scoring contest as it was. And there's also a couple other moments where KU shouldn't even scored as many points as they did. So you can make the argument that K-State should have made this one a lot worse than it was. You can make that argument about a lot of games this season, including some of the losses for the Wildcats. If they play the way they've played the last 2 weeks, adding a little bit of sprinkles of UCF as well, then I think that not only do they have a good chance of keeping up with Texas Tech, who is seen as a top 15 team in the country. I thought we were going to get in the top 10 coming to Manhattan. AP did not move them up this past week. You could beat them. Not only are you going to keep up with them, you could win this football game in Manhattan and get yourself right back in conversation to finding yourself in Arlington if a couple things fall right the rest of the way. 100%. Jayce Brown led the charge for the wide receivers and second on the team with a 90.6 overall grade in the PFF data on the offensive side. If you want, there was another 90 score as well, only played 5 snaps, but Jay Knuth had 90.5 offensive grade. Probably would have been even higher. He might have led the team if you would have found the end zone on that nice breakaway run at the end of the game. Now, I think it's a smart move that they didn't score a touchdown. The fact that there's no need to do that, it would have been cool to maybe kick it on and win by an extra 6 points. But at the end of the day, and the fact that he got tackled was probably a good thing for for the coaching staff, not having to yell at them and say, you need to get down in that situation. So good thing on that. Rounding out the top five, Braden Lofton only played 6 snaps, but he had a 77.1 offensive grade, including 84.2 on the passing side. Passing side was amazing. That's why I wanted to really lead that off on this conversation. And then Jared Tibbs was number 5 with 44 snaps and a 70 grade. The snaps seemed kind of low, and that's because Kansas State only played 55 snaps, 55 offensive snaps, and that should tell you something right there. That's one of their lowest offensive snap grades, snap counts of the season, and they still won the way they did against KU. Pretty impressive stuff. They're playing their best football right now when it matters the most, because their next 2 games are going to be absolutely insane when it comes to Utah and it comes to Texas Tech. There's a lot of crazy stuff on the route coming in for Kansas State, and I think they can handle it. I absolutely think they can handle it. The passing blocking was amazing yet again, if you look at these stats, and that has been something we have seen for quite some time now this season. It continues to shine in the eyes of the offensive line, and I really appreciate that. This is something that they really need to continue to do over and over again. And a little fix up here. I said the next 2 games when it comes to the most important things, really the next 2 of the next 3, because you got Oklahoma State in between. Texas Tech and Utah are the ones that I was actually referring to. But back to my conversation about the pass blocking. We saw John Pastore and Andrew Linegang and Sam Leheck lead the charge with at least an 80 or above on the passing grade. Terrence Enos and JB Nelson coming in right behind them, and Amos Talele right there as well. All of them at least a 67 or better. Now, there was some issues with the one blocking, though, but not everyone. We're starting to see, and we've had these conversations in the past, and if you're an everyday and you've listened to them with me, I've talked about how the numbers on run blocking have been lower in the eyes of PFF, in the eyes of advanced data, compared to pass blocking all season long. That has been a known fact. But every week, the average of the players have certainly grown. It's that yet again, where players like Terrence Enos leads the charge, with the exception of the tight end play. Garrett Oakley was fantastic in run blocking, 78.1 in his 31 snaps. But Enos, JB Nelson, Sam Heck, and John Pastore lead the charge with over a 60 run blocking grade. That is helping that average move up. But we are seeing still some players lag behind. Devin Vass, Amos Talele, some of those players didn't have the best run blocking grades when we're seeing it around the 50s and below. So obviously some things that need to improve on that offensive side, and they're going to definitely have to continue doing that, especially against a tough team in Texas Tech, who has probably one of the toughest defensive lines in all of college football coming up on Saturday. Let's dive into that defensive side, because they are absolutely elite, and they continue to do so against KU. But there's one glaring issue that has to be fixed, and it's especially about a player that you don't want it to be about. We'll talk about that next, right here on Locked On Kansas State. But first, college football is back, and I couldn't be more excited. The tailgates, the rivalries, the energy in the stands, there's nothing like it. But let's be real, actually getting tickets can feel more like a battle than the game itself. Endless queues, hidden fees, prices jumping at checkout. It never ends. But it can end, and that's why I use Game Time. It's the app that gives advantage back to fans. It's the easiest way to score last-minute tickets at the best prices with no surprise fees. What you see is what you paid. I pulled up Game Time, and in just a couple taps, I've seen amazing deals, and I'm talking about your favorite college football games as low as $25. I also love the zone deals, too. You pick a section, and Game Time picks your seats, and you save even bigger. So take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply, but again, that's promo code LOCKEDONCollege, all one word, for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. Welcome back to Locked On Kansas State, your daily Kansas State Wildcats podcast. Hop right in that subscribe button, leave a comment, hit a like while you're there. Let's talk one more time about this Sunflower Showdown. 17 straight feels good on a Victory Monday. And on the defensive side, it's what you expect. The numbers look really good when it comes to PFF premium stats, the advanced data, if you will, over on Pro Football Focus. Daniel Cobbs leads the charge with a 75.1 defensive grade. Desmond Purnell comes in second with 75.6. I'm just going to go out the top five real quick. Gunnar Maldonado with a 72.3. Donovan McIntosh, 69.9. And Yusuf Samalo with his only 22 snaps, 68.2. So let's move sixth place in there. VJ Payne with his 74 snaps at a 68 even. I love the fact that almost all of the names that I mentioned were in the secondary. Love that. The passing game, the offense is great, and the secondary stepped up against Kansas. Perfect timing, yet again. Perfect timing, and with the exception of having Samalu and Purnell in there, it's all secondary on the conversation. There's one thing that I have to mention here: 78 defensive snaps. The thing that I've been tracking all season long, Zayshawn Rich played 70 of the 78. So this still finds his way in almost every single play on the defensive side. We've seen that almost the entire season so far. VJ Payne did lead the defense this week, though, in 74 of the 78 snaps. That's pretty impressive. Giving out the blowout, you still find a way to put in your starters. We got 23 different players that play some sort of defensive play. I think special teams comes into that as well. Sterling Lockett's name popped up on here, so I'm guessing that also counts the special teams. So maybe it's not actually 23, so just keep that in mind. One thing that is an issue to me, and I've seen it in the comments and when we did our reaction show, and I figured it was going to be the case. I was waiting for this data to pop up, and it's actually worse than I expected. According to Pro Football Focus, there were 48 tackles taken down by this defense and 18 missed tackles. If you put that in perspective, they had 16 missed tackles against Arizona in the loss, which I thought was one of the most egregious games that Kansas State has played in a very long time, maybe even under the Chris Kleiman era when it comes to offense, defense, you name it. 18 missed tackles, and you still find a way to win this football game. Imagine how good this defense would feel if you clean that up. Because I think you can put the word elite next to this defense over the last few weeks based on their turnovers, based on how they've got pressure to the quarterback, how they've caused chaos, dare I say. If you can stop these missed tackles, you change your fact from being an elite defense to one of the best defenses in the Big 12, in all of college football. And you can put yourself on the map this week with a huge defensive performance against Texas Tech. Out of those 18 missed tackles, 7 of them come to one player. And I think it's the worst player that you could have them come from. It's Austin Romaine. Austin Romaine, according to Pro Football Focus, had only 2 tackles, 3 assists, and 7 missed tackles. That accounts for a 58.3% missed tackle rate. Also allowed 3 receptions on all 3 of his targets. Just not a great game for Austin Romaine. Now, I did notice that he looks like he's dealing with some sort of injury. He had somewhat of a modified club hand on one of his hands during the game. I'm sure that had a lot to do with the missed tackles. So if you take Austin Romaine with the fact of him, of course, being maybe not 100%, because it looks like he's dealing with something on that hand, you have 11 missed tackles in this one. Ryan Davis, Desmond Purnell were the second place on the team, both with 2 missed tackles apiece. But to put in that perspective, Desmond Purnell was everywhere in this game. He had 7 tackles and then 2 missed tackles. So only a 22% miss rate on that one. Rounding went out, calling everybody else out if you want to. Zayshawn Rich, Quamos, Rex Van Wyf, Chidi Obiizor, Wesley Fair, VJ Payne, and Gunnar Maldonado all had 1 missed tackle apiece. But if you recall what I said at the beginning of this, talking about the defensive grades, half of those players I mentioned were at the very top. So 1 missed tackle, not a big deal. Of course, 7 or more, in this case, 7 was leading the charge for Austin Romaine, big deal. But overall, 18 missed tackles is huge. And a lot of this did come in the first half, and Chris Kleiman brought it up in his presser right after the game that he said they were absolutely horrendous on defense in the first half when it came to tackling. He kind of called it out. He said, we have to tackle better in the second half. Adjustments were made and they were improved. So that's something to look forward to. Austin Romaine just has to get better when it comes to this. If it's something that he's dealing with his hand, then obviously that's something to pay attention to moving forward. And maybe, just maybe, you have to maybe put somebody else or put somebody in his spot instead of playing him the way that you played him on Saturday. He played 55 of the 78 snaps. That could have been the fact, maybe why he only played 55, because he was missing so many tackles. I'm not quite sure, but something to keep an eye on heading in this week, getting ready for Texas Tech. I hope that the media, somebody who's actually in Manhattan this Thursday, when Joe Klannerman goes to speak, the coordinator conversation brings up the conversation about Austin Romaine. I'd like to hear his thoughts on that, why we're not getting that type of performance that we were expecting from him so far this season. Overall, though, I want to round back. I want to go back to the same conversation here. This defense is elite and can be one of the best in college football if they fix one simple thing, and that's wrapping up. And that's something that was fixed in the second half. I expect that number to be nowhere near 18 against Texas Tech, because I think it's going to be a primary focus this week in practice. I think it's going to be a primary thing that they pay attention to. And obviously with the adjustments they made in the second half, they have something they already can work on moving forward. So I wouldn't expect that number to reach double digits against Texas Tech. And if they do that and cause a couple turnovers themselves, Kansas State has a really good chance to win this football game. 100%. They have a chance to win against Texas Tech. I feel very confident saying that after what I've seen them play the last few weeks. Do you agree with me? Do you think they can win this football game? I think, one, it's the Big 12. It's a dog-eat-dog world. Any team can beat anyone on any given day. I mean, I think even Oklahoma State might shock the world at one point in time this season, maybe. West Virginia, maybe. How did they beat Pitt? West Virginia beat Pitt, and Pitt looks like actually a pretty good team this year. So who knows? But all I'm saying is that Kansas State is in a way higher tier, especially what they played over the last couple of weeks compared to those teams. And when you go up against a team like Texas Tech, although they look really good this year, although they just shut out Oklahoma State, I think Kansas State can run with them. I think that I am safe. I'm ready to put Kansas State back in the conversation as being one of the big dogs in the Big 12 and can run with anybody in this conference. BYU, Cincinnati, Texas Tech, it doesn't matter. I think Kansas State belongs in that conversation after what we've seen the last few weeks. Let's wrap it up here. Victory Monday. It feels great that we got 17 in a row, but now all eyes need to focus on Texas Tech. Tomorrow we'll dive into them even more when we react to Chris Kleiman's press conference. And of course, any more information we get going on throughout the week. Let's shift our focus, though, to the men's basketball side. We didn't get a chance to talk about it. Friday night, they played in an exhibition game against Mizzou. The results weren't fantastic when it comes to the win-loss thing. That doesn't matter in an exhibition game, but there is a lot of things to be excited about, and I want to talk about them next, right here on Locked On Kansas State. But first, the NBA is back, and there's no better time to get on the action than with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you miss the start of the game or you want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks or even a double overtime comeback, something that's happened multiple times so far this NBA season. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps the game so exciting. And especially when your team's making that late quarter push. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when you bet your first $5 bet wins. So if you head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Let's dive into it right back here on Locked On Kansas State. I thank you so much for joining the conversation, as you always do. I really appreciate you hopping in and being an everydayer. If you are an everydayer, smash that like button, leave a comment. Let me know where you're listening from. That'd be really cool as well. Let's dive into men's basketball a little bit here. We didn't get a chance to talk about it from a game that happened late Friday night, an insane tip-off, 9 o'clock Central, right before the Sunflower Showdown. I watched the game. I just didn't have the energy, I'm not going to lie to you, to record a show to get right before the Sunflower Showdown on Friday night, which turned into Saturday morning very, very fast. So I want to still get my thoughts here. And I think the main takeaway before we get into anything is don't overreact to exhibition games, because there is 2 for Kansas State. There'll be another one on Friday. And of course, losing a game doesn't feel great, even if it doesn't count against the records. And that's exactly what happened in this one. Kansas State fell to SEC Missouri 100-91 in exhibition action. And first off, the first thing you might say if you didn't watch this game was, wow, we allowed 100 points and wow, we scored 91. And that's something you should absolutely take away. I think that's a fair assessment right off the bat before we dive into anything, is that there is a concern here that we allowed 100 points in a basketball game. But there also is a lot of optimistic views about, man, this offense looks pretty good under Matthew Driscoll, having him on the sidelines, getting 91 points, something that you did not see last year for Kansas State. And it all was behind junior All-American PJ Haggerty. He was leading the entire game. The scores 23 points, had 6 assists. Nate Johnson, the other player that you think is going to kind of be that Thunder Lightning combo with PJ, had 14 points. And they stepped up in a really big way. PJ had 8 for 14 in field goals, 2 for 4 from 3-point range, and was 5 for 7 from the charity strike. And then, of course, had his 6 assists. He was that stat stuffer that we all know. He had 2 rebounds and 2 steals as well. And all of that was only in 25 minutes. That's probably the least amount, with the exception of the exhibition game on Friday, that we're going to see from PJ Haggerty play all season long. Unless it's one of those blowout games in non-conference play, you're going to at least see him play probably 30 to 35 minutes every night is my best thing. The biggest takeaways here, I'm going to give you one positive, then I'm going to give you one thing that needs to be worked on. I thought rebounding looked a lot better. I think they actually overall lost the rebounding battle by 1. Now, again, these stats are I guess you could say unofficial, but I think they lost it 35-34, but they lost it just by 1 to a Missouri team who was probably one of the tallest in the country, let alone the SEC. And that was a huge concern of me heading into the season. Who was going to be that big man that could step up, who could make some rebounding, who could really crash the boards? And I think that was a nice step forward. Now, can it improve? Absolutely. And I think it will improve. But the fact that we're seeing that now, this was the first ever, 2 halves of basketball against another team that wasn't wearing purple, that this unit has played. So many new transfers coming in, so many international players getting their first taste of college basketball against a different opponent. So I really liked what I saw from Kansas State. And I think that you should have some optimism about this heading into the new year. Again, do not overreact, whether it's plus or minus side. It's just one exhibition game. You're not getting the same type of rotations. You're not getting the same minutes as you normally would. And you're playing some players that you probably won't be playing all season long, but it's still worth mentioning that I think overall there's some good things to like about Kansas State here. I think they played great on the offensive rebounding side, giving yourself more second chance points. They led that category 11-7, although they missed the total rebounds by just 1 point. And then you found yourself at the charity strike 21 times. That's pretty good. Although you did give 34 attempts to Missouri. So they can't foul. They're having trouble fouling, and Jerome Tang made that as a huge concern right off the bat when he spoke to the media right after the game. The transition defense is something that needs to get fixed. I think that's why a lot of those 100 points came into play. Defense will be the main thing that we pay attention to this year. And that's a huge flip, a huge 180, if you will, based on what we've seen over the last couple of seasons. You've kind of entered a moment where over the last couple seasons where we've headed into the year, we've felt very comfortable about the defense. Jerome Tang's defense will handle it. They'll take care of it. His coaching, the way he coaches, the way he has his teams, the defense is very disciplined. And then you'd question the offense. We might be in a new moment now where the offense leads the charge with PJ Haggerty, with Abdi Bashir, the way they shoot, the way they take care of the ball. They might lead the charge and they might find themselves scoring a lot of points, but also allowing a lot of points. The defense could potentially be the liability of this team this season. Again, not overreacting, but just seeing what I saw on the game on Friday. If that is the case, I think that's the best case scenario, and here's why. Over the last few years, we have not seen this team be able to overcome the offensive struggles. with Matthew Driscoll coming in as an assistant coach, I think taking over as a lot of the offensive charge, if you will, with that head coaching experience, obviously a good relationship with Jerome Tang going back all the way to the Baylor days. I think we have, and of course, the players we've had in the portal, I think we've added a nice spot to the offensive side. If the defense is the thing that's lagging early in the season, while they find their buy-in, while they find their adjustments and they get ready to go on the year, I think Jerome Tang can have the defense ready to go by Big 12 play. I didn't feel confident that that could happen on the offensive side over the last couple seasons, but what we've seen from Jerome Tang in the past from the defense and the good things that we saw in the very first exhibition game against Mizzou, the transition defense lacked, yes, but it's fixable. The rebounding looked good, although they lost the rebounding game, yes, but obviously that can get better. The main things that need to get improved in non-conference games that I saw right off the bat was transition defense, which I think Jerome Tang can figure out. But most importantly, handling big guys in the paint. Doran Buka looked pretty green. McGriff looked like a little green as well. And they struggled playing against size, something that I knew was going to be a concern heading into this season. If they can find a way to get 50% better at that this season, fix their transition defense, and continue this offensive scheme, this team will compete for the Big 12 this season. And it's a tough Big 12. And they don't have to win the Big 12 to make the dance. Remember that. They could probably finish in the middle of the pack and find themselves in the NCAA tournament this year. I think more this year than years past. If you're speaking about like bubble teams like West Virginia last year, who just found themselves out of the consideration of the NCAA tournament, that team would have made the tournament this year based on what we're seeing from some of these other big Big 12 schools like BYU, like Kansas, like Texas Tech. Some of those teams look very, very good. Arizona as well. And I think that you can run with those teams this year. You might not win the whole thing, and I think that's a very fair assessment to say. Like, Jerome Tank's not going from 2 years out of the dance to winning the whole Big 12. That's probably not going to happen, but you can play competitive basketball against these teams. I didn't even mention Houston. Of course, they're the top dog here. You can play competitive basketball against these teams, maybe even find a way to steal a few and get yourself in the NCAA tournament if a few things on the defensive side, which is wild to say, improves. And I think that's going to be the huge thing that they focus on Friday's exhibition game. It's their final tune-up game before they prepare to play, and they'll be ready to go. They're playing Division II Newman. It's an in-state school. They'll be playing that one on Friday night, and then they'll get ready to play some basketball on Tuesday as they open up regular season play. Lots of exciting stuff for the men's basketball team. We have an exhibition game for the women's here on Monday night. We'll break that down on tomorrow's episode, as well as what we hear from Chris Kleiman as we move on to Texas Tech Week. It's a good feeling. Momentum is starting to shift in the eyes of Kansas State here. K-State faithful, are you feeling good? Because I am. I feel a little bit of optimistic views about the football team, how they can do with Texas Tech coming in. There's that game time did get announced, by the way, 2:30 Central Time on Fox. That game is going to be. So you're right in the middle of a national window, afternoon window there, late afternoon, 2:30 Central Time on Fox against number 13 ranked Texas Tech. We'll see you back here tomorrow with another episode. Until then, please like, please subscribe, and please leave a comment. Let me know your thoughts about the Kansas State Wildcats. Please like the video. We'll see you back here next time, right here on Locked On Kansas State.